Hello, newly homeschooler parent. Today we're going to be talking about English with more of an emphasis on literature. So I wanted to share with you this diagram that's called a story chart. And we're going to be teaching this as a way for you to get book reports done, or maybe together as a family learn how to do story sequence charts together. And they're really fun to do, and you're going to see how you and your family are going to enjoy them as well. Okay, so we're going to be going over a story sequence chart because every story has a sequence. So when your child discerns that pattern, they'll be able to see it in everything they read, everything they see. So you could do this for books, you could do this for movies. So let's take a little closer look at what the story sequence chart is all about. Okay. So we have, and it does look like a little triangle because it starts off down here in exposition, where the author introduces all the characters and the settings of a place. Then it goes into rising action, where things are taking place that are drawing us closer to the main event. And then it goes up to climax, when the problem is actually revealed. Then we go down to denouement. Everything starts revealing itself and things are starting to wrap up nicely. And then finally the conclusion, when it's the happy ever after or the end. Okay, so that's simply the story sequence chart of every story. Then you have different elements. The setting, where did it take place, what year? The characters, who are the protagonists, the good guys, the bad guys, etc. And then your conflict. What is the problem? What does the main character want in the story? And then the plot, which is what is the gist of this story? What's going on? And the theme. It's usually the main idea of the story, the universal truth, or I guess you could say the lesson learned in all this, right? And so this might seem very tricky and complicated, and would you believe that my second grader was doing Shakespeare literature analysis? No, that sounds way too complicated for a second grader, right? Of course. So we didn't start there. I started it much simpler, and I want to show you how. And don't worry, I'll be providing these samples for you too. So we started off with a skeleton, right? Same thing, everything's there. But I had the kids draw it themselves, because this way they're not only writing these different elements, but they're also able to practice their penmanship and then jot it down in their own words so that they understand it. And so I had them draw it themselves in like a big poster, and we hung them out around the room. I don't know where they're at now, but it was really neat because it did help them understand. And as we went through every single element here, I made these cards. So when I introduced one of the elements, let's say this one happens to be the rising action, then I would provide the definition for that. Eventually, this became like a game. So I would set them out and I would have them do like memory, kind of like that game memory, where the cards are stacked on one side and the words are on one side and the definitions would be on the other side, and they would try to match them. Of course, they're not going to figure it out the first time, but over time, you're going to see that they're going to understand. And the more you practice doing the sequence chart with different books or stories, the easier it is for them to really grasp their definitions. So these are the cards that I just made. I'll provide to you on like a PDF, all the keywords and their definitions, so you can do this at home. So let me give you an example. Come closer. By the way, that's my hubby filming, so thank you. Okay, so let's say we had this, and for the most part I would either draw it on a paper, or we would put it in the whiteboard or a poster board. Whatever you have at home is fine. And we would start with a very, very simple story that everybody's familiar with, okay? So let's say the Three Little Pigs. Okay, the Three Little Pigs. What's the setting? Okay, they're in a forest. Who are the characters? The Three Little Pigs and the wolf. Okay, what's the conflict? Okay, the wolf wants to eat these piggies that are in the forest. Okay, so exposition. Exposition would start with, there was 3 little pigs in a forest, 3 little brothers, 3 little piggy brothers, and there was this big bad wolf that was kind of hanging around them. rising action. Each piggy decided to build their own place. One made it out of this, one made it out of that, and so on. Then the wolf starts coming around each of their homes, right? And what does he do? He starts blowing their houses down. The climax happens when, what happens at the climax? The wolf finally gets to the last house and he can't knock it down. So then what happens? Well, I guess depending on the version that you have, but the one I saw, and I think I saw a cartoon, they end up setting a trap for the wolf. And then he ends up coming through the chimney and he falls in a pot that they were brewing hot water in, and that's the end of the wolf. Okay. So then the denouement would be, and then the big bad wolf never bothered them again, if he survived. Depending on the story that you're sharing with them, right? And then the piggies started to hug each other. They were so happy that they're all alive and happy. And the conclusion, they all ended up building the same type of house so that they would withstand the wolf, or whatever version you have. Okay, so that took us all the way through the entire story, and it was super fast and super easy, right? So you would do that with a couple of stories that they're familiar with so that they can see it. And you want to start with children's book, even if you have older kids. I started my 5th grader, and I started him with a children's book because it's easier to see that pattern. And then you can start doing the maybe like junior novels, or even a movie. I know in our case we did Star Wars because the kids were really familiar with it and they were able to quickly tell me all the parts of the story chart. So I know Disney Plus has a lot of great movies out right now, like Frozen 2. So that might be something that you want to try out as a family together with all the kids. And you can cater it to the level of your child. So maybe when you sit with them, with him or her, and you want to go over the movie that you guys just watched together, maybe they just want to tell you. You can ask them, what was the exposition? And she might say, oh, what's the exposition again? And then she would go to her little poster that she did, and she would be able to remember what she wrote or drew there. And then she could say, oh, that's right, it happened, they were in this enchanted castle, or I don't know, I haven't seen Frozen 2, so whatever the exposition is, you can help her remember what the meaning is, and then you take it through one step at a time, and you'll see that she's able to communicate to you basically what happens in the story. But she would be doing it orally as opposed to writing it. Then if you have older kids, they'd be able to actually write it down, whatever it is that happens in the story. And for older kids, you can even take it up one notch more. Have them talk about one specific thing. For example, if you're dealing even with middle schools, they could talk more about the theme. What was the lesson in there? What was the climax? And what was the struggle in the story? Have them go a little bit more in depth. Maybe the characters. Talk about the characters. What character did you resonate with? Why that character? And have them just write a paper on that particular character. They could take any one element and give you one paragraph for it. And just depending on how much work you want to give them, you can give them a paragraph for each one. But I really love the story sequence chart, and we started this way with Star Wars movie, and we moved on to children's book, and then we eventually tackled Shakespeare. I know, it's crazy. But I was very amazed at the themes that they were able to extract from Shakespeare plays. So I wouldn't doubt that your children would probably be able to draw out amazing things from the stories. And so that's basically it. That's the story sequence chart. And that's what we're doing for literature and English. And I hope that that's something that you can do with your family and enjoy it together. All right, stay tuned for our next video.